Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, distinguished guests, and folks of all stripes, put your hands together for the Space Cadet Sports Podcast. Houston, we have Paul Salazar Jr.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Space Cadet Sports Podcast, your Houston sports podcast for diehard Houston sports fans. From a diehard Houston sports fan, I'm Paul Salazar Jr., your favorite diehard Houston Astros fan podcaster. I'm obviously a podcaster, I'm an actor, I'm a self-appointed cookie philosopher and creative multi-hyphenate. Of course, I'm a Houston native and I have the receipts to prove it. Folks, I recently just flew back home to Los Angeles with some El Bolillo pastries, some pan dulces, with me on the flight. That's right, I travel with my pan dulces. I've spent the last decade or so as a comedy writer in Los Angeles, and now I'm podcasting. That's what happens once you hit 10 years out here. You just start to accept LAX as an acceptable experience, and the mayor stops by and gives you a podcast. Welcome to said podcast. This is what my brother calls the Paul Broadpod Ball Blog. Hey, brother, please check out spacecadetsports.substack.com for the full blog experience, or the full blog experience, depending on which way you want to hear me say that word there. That's right, homonym jokes right off the gate. You know, I started Space Cadet Sports as a passion project because most media is infuriating as a diehard, long-term fan of the Houston Astros. And, our other teams don't get much love in the media either. Here, well, at least, from the national media perspective, But see, here we are not doom and gloom Houston fans, or worse, national media haters. We love our teams and we root them on, but we also want to discuss the ins and outs of our teams without too much homerism. Keyword, try. We try to be reasonable and not too hot-takey or reactionary. Folks, we are recording this transmission here in sunny Los Angeles, where I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and co-producer, the Roz to my Frasier. Carla, the dog, is here with me. She may get on mic from time to time. She has the hot takes on this podcast. On this episode, we are recapping. We are reigniting this relationship, folks. I have not been on the podcast for quite some time. We're kind of going to hit all of the major teams, talk about a bit of a state of the union for our teams for this podcast, and do a quick check-in here of the health of this podcast and our teams. Let's just dive right into it, folks. We're people who are first-time listeners of this podcast, and even if you are a returning listener, it has been quite some time since my last podcast. You might feel like a first-time listener. I always say a good day, mates, to my Australian listeners. I don't want to brag, but I was in just outside of the top 100 of Australian baseball podcasts, almost out the gate, folks. So I want to just say hello to those Australian listeners out there. And also, I do want to start off this podcast with an apology. I have a prepared written apology here. No, of course not. I don't. I didn't get into that much trouble, but I do want to apologize, folks. Life just kind of hit me hard, for good and for bad. I'm very pleased to say that I got an acting job. I was in a movie that took up unexpected amount of time from me, and I also have another podcast that is in full swing while we are in the off season of baseball here. We still have football and basketball going strong, but obviously my primary focus is baseball coverage here. We're in the off season of baseball, but my other podcast is a Saturday Night Live podcast, and we are in full swing in the season over there, so that definitely has a bit more of a priority in the baseball off season here. And on top of those good things happening in my life, sadly, I also had to go home to help take care of some family family matters to help take care of my grandfather, give my family who takes really great care of him a little bit of time off. I'm very grateful that I'm in a place in my life where I could do something like that. But unfortunately, just it was a perfect storm of a lot of things happening, and I had to make some space for things going on in my life, and the podcast just kind of took some time off there from the podcast. I apologize, dear listeners. I am back in full swing, ready to talk about all kinds of things that have happened since I last talked, folks. My Paul's Pick podcast will happen later in the week. Don't worry. We will talk about football picks and Paul's Picks in complete detail in those podcasts. So for those of you who are Paul's Picks listeners, want to get some NFL picks, want to check in with how I'm doing there, check in a couple days later in the week, Wednesday or Thursday. I will pick all of the NFL games. I will let you know how my pick'em has been going this season. I'll let you know the weeks that I have missed, how I've done there, and we'll check in with my fantasy football league and how I'm doing there. But spoiler alert, obviously, if I am confident enough to say we'll check in a couple of days as to where my fantasy is, you might be able to tell what type of a season I've had so far. But for today's podcast, let's go ahead and move on and talk about our Houston teams. Let's not bury the lead. Folks, we are here to talk Astros baseball, and there's no bigger story that is going on right now in the baseball world in Houston that isn't about that there isn't a bigger story than the Kyle Tucker trade, folks. Obviously, this is not breaking news to you if you are an Astros fan. If you are a diehard like me, you already know what is happening. You have heard this. You have heard a million takes. You know what is going on. This is me just recapping, letting you know how I feel about this. Obviously, there has been a lot of anger. There's been a lot of frustration. You come to your boy. Me, I'm not the hot take guy. I'm the cool glass of water. I can be frustratingly understanding and reasonable at times. Folks, this is not the time for reason. This is not the time for understanding. This is time for full-on emotion. Whatever emotion you're feeling about this Kyle Tucker trade is accurate. We weren't expecting it. This was something that we didn't see coming. So far as GM Dana Brown was even fairly adamant, you would say, that a Kyle Tucker trade wasn't in the works. Then the next thing you know, during the free agency process, GM Dana Brown is out there saying that nobody is off the table in terms of trade talks. They are willing to listen on everybody. I didn't say they were willing to trade everybody. They said they were willing to listen on everybody. And that was the first red flag for me. Obviously, the Astros made some pretty conservative business moves here. There is no other way around it. And the more time I've had to reflect, I don't know what the podcast would have been like if I just would have jumped on here and in a hot take style, in a very reactionary style, tell you the day Kyle Tucker was traded to Houston, traded from Houston, how I felt. I was really emotional. I was frustrated. I couldn't believe that we felt like we had to trade Tucker. Let's look at this from the business standpoint. This is what we're being told. We're being told by Dana Brown, in the media, that we're still contenders. We're finding ways to build this team up for the future. We're trying to find ways that we can get production out of this outfield for this season and going forward in the future, that we're not going to miss a beat. Now, he can kind of say that, and it's kind of true because last season, Kyle Tucker was very injured. So what he gave us this past season, I'm sure that we can get some kind of replicant performance from a couple of different players. I see that, but also at the same time, there is not many players in the league who are Kyle Tucker. You have to Frankenstein an outfield to get the same kind of skills that Kyle Tucker would offer you out of just one baseball player. The guy is absolutely fantastic. He struggled with injury. He has made it clear that he wants to get that bag in the offseason. But I guess for me, it's really hard for me to sit here and say that this is a good move for our future when it's most likely that we're also not going to sign Bregman. I thought, like, if this move is happening because we've signed Bregman to a long-term deal, there's no way we're signing Kyle Tucker in the future, and we just need some kind of return from Kyle Tucker because things are going to be tight going forward. I kind of understand that very conservatively on some kind of level. I'm not saying that I excuse it or think that that should happen. But also, if you heard me in that scenario, in that made up thing, it would have to be a scenario I'm flip-flopping here. It would have to be, a situation in which Bregman was signed long-term and things were looking tight. We were worried about, who else we can sign cheaply going forward, and that's why you do a long-term deal. And now, what's coming out, from Chandler Rome, and obviously from the rumors of the Astros going after Nolan Ariando in St. Louis. Pardon me, folks, I'm so worked up, I'm getting the hiccups here. But part of, hearing that we're going after another third baseman, hearing that, we had Isaac Paredes, who is a natural third baseman as the key component, I would say, of the Tucker trade. We also have Cam Smith, who is now our number one prospect in the minors, and we also had Wasinski, who is a Houston-born relief pitcher. Sure, but Isaac is essentially the crown of that deal because he gives you immediate impact, and Cam Smith is more of a prospect still. We're not sure of what that is going to do for us in the future. That's a sweetener there. So the fact that we have a third baseman in Alex Bregman, we traded for a third baseman, and we're still trying to add a third baseman, is the second, third, and fourth red flag there for me that the Astros are hardballing Bregman. Wherever they are at with the 6-year deal, wherever they are at with the price tag, that is where they're saying they're going to stick. And now it's kind of up to the market to push the Astros' hand or to make for Bregman to say, well, the New York Yankees are offering this. And this is a moment we're opening the door for the Yankees to go all in on Bregman here. So we'll have to, that doesn't fill me with confidence. Alex Bregman in pinstripes. The Astros losing Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker in one offseason is a tough pill to swallow. All season long, I've kind of tongue-in-cheek style been saying, the Astros, the official Astros panic meter here at Space Cadet Sports, and how it pretty much never moved. Well, right now the panic meter is fluctuating here at Space Cadet Sports. The Astros without Kyle Tucker and the Astros without Alex Bregman, I'm not saying that some kind of window is closed, but the ceiling for how good a team can be without Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker remains to be unseen. The fact of the matter is that Astros enjoyed a golden era because their lineup was so deep. Their lineup had so many hitters that could hurt you in different types of ways. And losing a guy like Kyle Tucker is going to be huge. We've lost him. It's hard to see him go. But losing him and Bregman in one season, we're going to have to see what that lineup looks like going forward when all the deals are done. Because right now, that sounds very scary to me. We still have pitching. I feel like we have some flexibility to make some moves. But it is feeling really tense here for your boy, having to feel good about these Houston Astros. We need this Tucker move. To me, this Tucker move shoots the front office in the foot because now it makes it imperative for Dana Brown to sign Alex Bregman. A lot of people have been critical of GM Dana Brown. To me, and I could be wrong here, but my take on this is Astros owner Jim Crane. Astros owner Jim Crane is pulling a Jerry Jones here. Why would Dana Brown say that he doesn't want to trade trade Tucker, then go around and go around and trade Tucker. I think what's happening is that Jim Crane is panicking with Alex Bregman contracts not going the way that he thought they were going to go. He's looking ahead, trying to gauge the interest of Kyle Tucker, hearing straight from Kyle Tucker, I'm sure his mouth being like, I want all the money, pay me. And Jim Crane getting worried and wanting to have something to show for Kyle Tucker. And I think that is a very foolish move, because I think Kyle Tucker is such a great player that you allow yourself to have one more season for him, and you enjoy that season and you try to re-sign him. I understand the logic of getting something for a player that is going to leave. This is a business after all. You're getting commodities for a commodity that wasn't going to be a long-term solution for your team. However, it just, with the fact that we don't have Bregman signed, it really, I think, shoots your team in the foot, because now that Bregman signing becomes so much more important. And I don't, and I understand there is a time frame there. You want to get the best deal you can for Kyle Tucker if you're trading him, so the sooner the better, before other teams make moves and more pieces have been moved and are off the table. But it just is such a business decision, and not, I think, a great baseball organizational decision. I that's why I think this is Jim Crane here, not Dana Brown. And I can't be wrong, but at the end of the day, it's Dana Brown's job to fall on his sword and explain why they did this. Dana Brown would not go out there and say, yeah, Jim Crane forced me to do this. This is not a good baseball move. I didn't like this. Jim Crane says what to do, and Dana Brown's job is execute. Try to say his 2 cents, but at the end of the day, it looks like Jim Crane is a type of owner that wants more control over the personnel moves here. That's what this sounds like to me. People like to blame Jeff Bagwell. People like to blame Dana Brown. To me, this screams like a business decision that has nothing to do with baseball organizational decisions. I'm not saying that the team is done for. I'm not saying this ruins them forever. They can get something out of Cam Smith. They can get a good performance out of Isaac Paredes, whose hit charts look like he's going to have a great season at Dakin Park. I really think that there can be some good that comes out of this. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer here to mention my SNL podcast, Sunday morning pre-recorded on Spotify, Apple Podcast, everywhere you hear podcasts. Go check that out. Sunday morning pre-recorded. Not to be a Debbie Downer, but I do think that right now it seems like there's more bad that can come out of this than good, and it makes me sad to lose Kyle Tucker, who was just an incredible player. And will continue to be an incredible player, his health permitting. And he's going to get a huge contract wherever he is going next. I don't think he'll stay with the Cubs. I think he'll sign a huge contract and to whatever team can afford him. But we'll see. It's definitely a sad day. It's been a sad week in Houston, and going forward, I don't know what this team's future is, or how this team is going to face the wrath of Houstonians if they're not able to sign Bregman. I feel like really shot themselves in the foot here from a PR standpoint, if nothing else. From a team building standpoint, I think that they now have a lot more moves that they have to do this offseason to remain World Series contenders. I'm not saying they're not playoff contenders or anything like that, but they have some moves to make, and they have some faith to rebuild with some of the fan base who is not happy with these moves. So enough Astros talk. Let's go ahead and move on to your Houston Texans. Your Houston Texans are officially AFC South champs as of this past week, beating the Miami Dolphins. They were able to clinch a playoff berth. They were able to clinch the AFC South. They are lovingly king of shit mountain, as Reddit likes to say. It's maybe not the best division, but once again, the Houston Texans are on top. Folks, I'm very excited about that. Of course, you want your team to be good, but obviously, my Houston Texans have had a rough couple of weeks since we last talked. Aziz Al Shire had a rough week in on the field, less so than in the social sphere, with a tough hit on Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence had to also have a surgery on his shoulder, which Aziz is wearing some of the blame for as well, even though he had prior shoulder injuries and probably should have had his shoulder surgery before that game. It's a sticky situation, violence and football. I've talked about it in the past, how, I struggled following football the last couple of seasons because the Texans were so bad, yes, but also because of how violent the game is. It's really hard to say that I care about all these players' safety and to completely, enjoy the violence of the game too. I find it kind of hard to parse out. And I'm not saying that, that it's hypocritical to enjoy the sport and feel the way that I feel. It's just, it's a balance of a situation where you do want the sport to be safer, you do want to progress it forward, but also you understand that this sport is full of violence, and it's really hard to I don't like it when this particular thing happens, where when a player, I feel like, it was a pretty quick play, whether or not we want to say, it was very intentional. I don't think it was intentional, or whether or not it was a late hit or an early, or a late hit or not, I think is the better way to look at it, because to say player's intent is always sticky. But even if we're looking at it as a late hit or not, this was a very quick play. He said that he had no malicious intent. You have to think that that's the truth. The fact of the matter is, in this day and age, these players really have to kind of amp themselves up to play this intensely, and also try to be good people off the field and amp themselves up to get this kind of anger or violence in the light type of way out of them. And it's hard to tell them, go for it, let's cream them, let's destroy them. But then when that line is crossed, when something goes too far, when somebody's really hurt, to then in retrospect try to shame them for that same behavior, so that kind of hypocrisy is really what gets me, is like where you're all for the violence until it goes too far, and then you really quickly turn on the player and make them a villain, when really you're supporting a very violent organization. So it happened to be this time that it was a player on my team that was villainized. But when it happens with other teams, when, I have to remind myself, when it happens to a player that I love, it's like I have to remind myself, like, don't hate the player, hate the game in some kind of a way. You know what I mean? So there's that. That was a huge story. There's been your Texans clinching. We're very excited about what the Texans are going to be in the playoffs. But, just at the beginning of the season, when we were talking about the Texans being Super Bowl contenders, I was definitely mild on that take. Of course, I was optimistic, but I was like, they have a lot to prove to me. And this team still has a lot to prove to me. So I'm hoping that as the season progresses here, I will see much better execution from the Houston Texans offense and a more consistent team. And hopefully they can start putting this team together now, as opposed to next season, where they can have a nice playoff push, where it's something that they can hopefully build off of and continue on into next year. The last thing I want to talk about tonight is your Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets have had a really great season so far. They made some noise in the NBA Cup. Unfortunately, after beating the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Cup in the for the first time since 2020, they beat the Golden State Warriors. This time with Steph Curry in it. The last time we talked, they didn't have Steph, but your Rockets beat the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Cup. Then they advanced to play the Oklahoma City Thunder, and we're kind of knocked down a peg a little bit, like definitely we were feeling ourselves as fans of the Houston Rockets, and it was a tough game. They got eliminated from the NBA Cup, but it was good to see. It's really good to see this team, the Houston Rockets, they have proved that they're not just a flash in the pan. They are a really good defensive team, and they are figuring it out. You see Alpi, you see Şengün out there really putting on a showcase. You see Jalen Green finding those moments of brilliance. He still can have some sporadic nights, something that they said on TNT during the NBA Cup, during the NBA Cup game that me and my brother Jesse watched together, the Golden State Warriors game. We watched it together. It was nice to watch a game with him. But, something that they were saying is like, Jalen Green went from being on a bad NBA team to a good NBA team. So, getting your shots, on a good team is different than just taking all the shots on a bad team. So he's trying to work through his shot selection. I think the Houston Rockets offense in total is improving offensively and trying to work on that shot selection and offensive consistency. You love to see the TNT off the bench, Tari Eason and Amen Thompson. TNT, just amazing length, amazing defense, and being able to put up some points. I really love this Rockets team. It's hard not to love them. They are 17-19 as of the recording of this podcast. Tonight they are playing the New Orleans Pelicans. For this game, or let me make sure, is that tonight? Trying to see here, folks. I apologize. Yeah, no, that is not tonight. And that is towards the end of the week. That's Thursday night. They're playing the New Orleans Pelicans. So we have that game to look forward to. That is going to be at home at Toyota Center. And then over on Sunday, Monday, they're going to play back-to-back at the Toronto Raptors and at the Charlotte Hornets. So that's your kind of Houston Rockets check-in today, folks. And yeah, as I said, this was just kind of our podcast to kind of reset here, kind of check back in with y'all out there, see how our teams are doing, a state of the union, and do check-ins all around. And with that being said, that's going to do it for this transmission, Space Cadets. I want to thank you for listening. Please like, rate, subscribe, review, share, bop it, skip it, all of those things. Smash those buttons for me out there in podcast land, wherever you are listening to this podcast. Please check out the Substack. Definitely with the off season happening, with a lot of things happening in my life, there's been less writing going on the Substack. It's been a lot more podcasts. We will get some more writing out there. We'll get some more memes out there, little things like that as the year is ending and the new year is starting up. So definitely check out the Substack. Be on the look for that. We'll have more content coming out there as I have more time to do it. Reach out on social media at Space Cadet Sports on Instagram and Threads, or you can call in and let me know how you're feeling. Leave me a voicemail, and if it isn't too crude or too crazy, it could even make the podcast. You can leave me a voicemail on SpeakPipe. That's speakpipe.com/Space Cadet Sports. Once again, speakpipe.com/Space Cadet Sports. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to be the best that you can be. Keep your head up, kid. And as always, vamos Houston.